recovery day to day, like not come in and leave, work at recovering. We've got a team kind of performance group that's been really good this year for us, getting guys back. But I think about how much it's changed in 25 years in terms of what the athletes do to prepare themselves, but also the facilities and resources that the teams provide these players to recover, to be at their very best. It's just night and day now. So that's what today was.
The 5 games in the Toronto series, only one was more than 1 goal game.
Yeah.
With the 2 styles here, Carolina, Florida, do you expect more of the same, more of a...
That would be, it would have been
Very
more
close.
Right. So if I looked at the 2 series, and I guess there's 2 games in the Boston series where the game kind of got away from one team, but not much. And then you're watching the games around the league, and there's big spreads on a lot of these, and there weren't in any of our games. I would say that in this, it's more likely of that it'll be tighter. That's the expectation coming in here, because both teams, the foundation of their game is a forecheck and a hard gap defensive game. We're identical in that mindset anyway. How it is employed may be differently, but so that would be potentially the expectation, that this will be a grinder for goals. I felt like in the Toronto series, even though there were teams that owned possibly 10-minute chunks, nobody was ever really able to maintain it. So if you scored, we get it to 2-0 in game, or they get it to 2-0 and we score the next goal. If we don't, or it goes just longer at 2, does that affect the outcome? Possibly, but both teams were able to rally. Not rally.
Good morning, Paul.
Morning.
How difficult of a sell, if at all, was it to get the returning players to accept a new style that went from run and gun to more of grind it out?
It's a good question. I'll try to answer it right. It wasn't difficult at all in terms of their intent. I didn't have to, I never had an argument with the player about the style of play, but it's a challenge in that this game happens so fast. You will almost always revert back to what you know. And if for scores, if you're not scoring, you'll always revert to that. It's, so getting that kind of, I don't know if the word is out of the system, but what we needed to have is we needed to have a run of very difficult games that you couldn't open your game up to have any kind of success. And what happened to us in January, between injuries and that schedule, we had to scratch and claw to win the game. So we were fatigued, we were banged up, we had important people at different times in that December, January. So we were truly, we played a lot of games at times with Barkov and Bennett out of our lineup. So you're going out in the ice going, we got to keep this thing tight, right? It's going to have to be a grinder for us to have success. And we did, right? We won a bunch of those tight games. So that then, the experience of, okay, we can win playing this style of hockey and I can have success. And yeah, maybe some of the numbers come down, but we still had a whole bunch of guys have kind of career years offensively. I think we needed, it wasn't a hard sell. It was just something that you weren't going in and giving a speech, showing video, and okay, we've decided to change who we are. We had to go through a bunch of adversity to cement it.
Yeah, kind of off that, I was actually went back and listened to like your first press conferences and stuff, and just one of the things you kept talking about was like the players drive it, like you have to play to your players' strengths, obviously. I'm curious how the way you guys are playing now maybe looks different than the way you would have envisioned it when you came in terms of like playing to your players' strengths, because the forecheck has gotten a lot of attention. Your speed plays into that. I'm curious if that was always the plan, or if you evolved as you saw what you had here.
Yeah, I think if I've got your question right, I started with an idea, and we ended up getting to that idea. But I was far more open to. So there was a lot of really good things that they did here. Some of it I didn't fully understand how they were able to do it. So it was me watching video, and it was great having Tuomo Ruutu here to kind of say this is the idea of what we're doing. And then we got to a point where we couldn't keep a lot of both. we had to shift to one or the other. We couldn't keep getting caught in the middle of what we're doing. Are we stretching every time we touch the puck, or are we in constant motion or not? So we ended up having to kind of back it right down. And that goes to my answer. The schedule and our injuries kind of forced that final decision. Okay, we just can't do this. We can't be a one or the other team. We've just got to take our skill set and employ it differently in a style of game.
I know you hate going back in time and talking about what you previously said, but when we talked in June, one of the things you mentioned was we're gonna stick with this, and the guys need to know that we're gonna stick with this.
Right.
And we may lose 4 out of 5 games, but we're not reverting back. We're gonna
Correct.
keep plowing away. How important was it that, I mean, because you've talked about this, that, hey, what are they gonna do? You know, you came with that
Right.
purpose in mind, correct?
Well, it's really important when you're trying to make change that let me answer your question. I think what you say in your opening speech at training camp has to be true the entire year. So you need to come with a plan, and you need to be confident in that plan, and you need to stay with that plan. You make adjustments, but you never come off the theme of what we were going to do. We talked about developing the capacity to endure. That was an opening speech line, and I may have said that in the thing. We had to develop the capacity to endure. So that if you get into a playoff game and it's not going your way, or if it's a grinding game, or if it's a different style than you're used to, there's no frustration in that. You have developed that ability to endure the grind. That's why the Boston series was almost perfect for us. Not because to have to go through it. This is still the heaviest series I've been a part of. That was as hard a hitting series in those first games that I've ever seen, and we found a way to endure it. The payoff for us in that series wasn't necessarily just this year that we were moving on. It was the best experience for all of these players to go through. Every guy in that room will never forget that series. It'll become who we are. Because you don't have to walk in the next year and go, hey, playoffs are really hard, so you should train hard this summer. You know, we actually should come to camp in really good shape because, you know, trust me, playoffs are hard. You're just going, you remember what it was like. You know what you felt like when you got on that plane the next day and we had to go to Toronto and do it again. So the endurance, developing the capacity to endure, and that's why the training camp was as hard as it was.
You mentioned the Boston series and then, of course, Toronto. Was there one moment in particular in any of those series where you really realized the potential of this team?
Not one, Katie, but I probably drove all of you crazy this year saying, I really like chunks of our game. I must have said that 1,000 times, right? And you're going, okay, coach, but why don't you just figure a way to throw 60 minutes at us here and we could believe you a little bit. You get to minute 36 of game 1. We'd given up 8 even strength shots. And then we learned something. We got down 3-1 on a kind of we had a shaky goal in there. And then we opened our game up and that game was over. We had 22 shots after that. So I felt there wasn't one moment. But what I think we've done better than anything else in terms of our team this year is we've learned from our losses. Really done a nice job. Like the difference between game 4 and game 5 in that Toronto series and also game 4 and game 5 of the Boston series, they're pretty significant differences in mentality of either how to claw back into a series or how to close a series. There were lessons there on video and they learned them.
And then I do want to ask about Jamie Compton and his impact. You have referenced before how he won a Stanley Cup back with the Kings in 2012 as an 8th seed. How has that been used maybe as an example, and what is his greatest strength now that you have coached with him for a few years?
So he's got 2 Stanley Cups. Boy, this can be a long answer. So I get to the rink real early, but I don't know that I've ever been to the rink before him. Now, he works out. This will shock you, but I don't. It's a joke, people. He's in really good shape. His ability here's his impact. He does an incredible job, detailed job of breaking down the game after the game. He works the power play, made a significant change, a dramatic change in that Boston series, which was one of the deciding factors for us, right? So he has that. But I think the real impact that he has is that he does a tremendous amount of individual video work with players. And it's not necessarily your fifth line. It's defensively with Carter Verhaeghe, Sam Bennett, Matthew Tkachuk, a whole bunch of your high-end offensive guys. He does a lot of individual work. He's made them better players. His strength is he does it every day, all day long. His work level, his work level is easily the best I've ever seen. And he's been doing that for the 8 years that I've worked with him. He's a champion in that, for sure.
Kind of off topic. I'm sure you haven't really been able to watch much of the Heat, but your guys' seasons have been like kind of mirror
Right.
images of each other. I'm just curious, is there like an appreciation of like seeing the way you both are kind of going from
Right.
8 seeds, little
I know
up and down
not-
regular season?
You know what?
Yeah.
So I don't follow the specifics of sports. I don't understand other sports. And I think it's because I know I don't, because I'm pretty sure they don't understand our sport, right? You put your whole life into one sport, you're like, I got no idea what they're doing. Like, football's a mess for me. They got 22 guys in the field. What the fuck? How can you follow anybody? But I do follow kind of teams, what they go through, coaches, what they go through. And then I get really interested in sports when you get to this time of year. Part of it is just the spectacle of it, right? Well, I'll watch the Masters, right? I'll watch that. But the local kind of team, I think it's just really cool that we're both doing this, and then we get to play on opposite nights. So the only thing better than coaching one of these two teams would be like owning a sports bar, right? That would be better because you are on a roll right now, right? But follow it. I do think that you kind of raise the energy level of sports fans in your market. So if one team's going, then they're also they're all into, and now that you got two teams cooking, and it's at the most pressure-filled time of year, it's really exciting.